The moment your wife starts smiling at another man's attention more than your loyalty, your marriage already has a countdown timer. Claire came home at 11:52 p.m. wearing the same cream-colored heels she bought after our 10th anniversary trip to Napa. I remembered the receipt because I paid for them through our joint Amex Platinum account, and because 6 months earlier she claimed we needed to cut unnecessary spending after criticizing me for upgrading my home office setup. Funny how budget rules always changed around her. I sat at the kitchen island with my laptop open beside a spreadsheet from our Wells Fargo investment account. 3 transactions glowed on the screen. 1 charge at the Langford Hotel downtown. 1 valet fee. 1 $480 dinner bill under a reservation for 2. Claire stepped inside carrying her purse loose at her side, like she had spent every ounce of restraint somewhere else before walking through our front door. Then she laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not guilt. Satisfaction. Pure entertainment. Like she had just finished watching the funniest movie of her life. That sound carved straight through my chest harder than any confession ever could. She kicked off her heels near the staircase and looked directly at me. "You're awake?" she asked casually, loosening her earrings. I stared at her lipstick, slightly smeared near the corner of her mouth. Claire followed my eyes and smiled wider instead of shrinking away. That reaction told me everything. For 3 months, my instincts had been building a case against her one clue at a time. Increased cash withdrawals. Hidden app notifications. Her phone screen flipping downward whenever I entered the room. Sudden Pilates classes on Thursday nights despite never caring about fitness before. I tracked timelines the same way I handled corporate fraud audits at my firm. Patterns mattered. Behavior shifts mattered. People leak truth through repetition. Last Tuesday, I checked our AT&T cloud records and found a number repeated 31 times in 8 days. Jason Reed. Real estate developer. Divorced. 42. I pulled property records on him during my lunch break yesterday. Downtown condo. 2. Lawsuits settled privately. 1 prior affair rumor involving a married interior designer. Claire walked to the wine fridge and poured herself a glass without asking whether I wanted one. Her movements carried zero hesitation. That bothered me more than the affair itself. Affairs happen in weak marriages every day across America. What destroys a man psychologically is disrespect layered on top of betrayal. Claire leaned against the marble counter and took a sip. "You should have seen the penthouse suite," she said. "Floor-to-ceiling windows. Honestly, the view alone was worth it." My jaw locked so hard pain spread behind my ears. She watched my reaction carefully, testing boundaries, measuring damage. I realized something ugly in that moment. Claire wanted emotional control more than romance. She wanted proof she could still destabilize me whenever she felt bored. "You tracked my card activity?" she suddenly asked, her eyes narrowing toward the laptop screen. There it was. No panic. No apology. Strategic calculation. Her brain skipped straight toward financial exposure. I slowly closed the laptop. "You used our account," I answered. Claire took another sip and smirked. "Then maybe you should have paid more attention sooner." That sentence flipped something inside me permanently. 12 years together, and suddenly I saw her less like my wife and more like a hostile business partner preparing an exit strategy. Then my phone vibrated against the counter. A private investigator I hired 48 hours earlier had finally sent the first batch of surveillance photos. Claire heard the buzz too, and for the first time that entire night, her smile faded. Claire stared at my phone screen like a trader watching a market crash begin in real time. That tiny shift in her expression lasted maybe half a second, yet I caught it immediately because I had spent the last decade studying reactions for a living. Fear always arrives before strategy. She placed her wine glass down slower this time. "Who keeps texting you after midnight?" she asked. Her voice sounded calmer now, measured, calculating angles instead of provoking emotions. I picked up the phone and opened the message. Without answering her, 8 surveillance photos loaded across the screen. Claire exiting the Langford beside Jason Reed. Claire touching his arm inside the lobby elevator. Claire entering the penthouse suite at 8:14 p.m. Timestamped. Crystal clear. The investigator even included parking records from the valet station and a copy of Jason's guest registration signature. Money buys efficiency in America, especially during divorce season. I looked up from the phone. Claire studied my face carefully, probably searching for rage, panic, weakness, something she could manipulate back into familiar territory. Instead, I felt something colder settling into place. Structure. Logic. The same mindset I used during hostile acquisition negotiations. Emotions create expensive mistakes. Documentation wins wars. You hired somebody? She asked quietly. I hired somebody after the wire transfer. That sentence landed harder than I expected. Her posture tightened instantly. 3 weeks earlier, I discovered a $25,000 transfer routed from our joint savings account into a separate Bank of America account under an LLC named Cedar Hill Consulting. Fake consulting firms rank near the top of hidden affair spending tactics. I learned that during a forensic accounting seminar 2 years ago. Most spouses hide purchases. Smarter ones create shell structures. Claire blinked twice. You investigated me over money? She asked. I investigated patterns, I answered. Money just leaves cleaner fingerprints than people. She crossed her arms and leaned back against the counter. Her confidence started cracking around the edges now. I saw her brain moving through options one by one. Deny, deflect, attack, cry, seduce. Every manipulator cycles through the same playbook once exposure hits the room. Jason helped me set that account up, she admitted. I wanted financial independence. Through hidden transfers? Through protection. There it was. The rewritten narrative. Claire already framed herself as the future victim before any separation discussion even began. That realization changed everything for me because it meant this affair stretched beyond excitement. She prepared. Infrastructure. Quiet exit routes. Asset positioning. My stomach tightened remembering something else. 6 months ago, Claire pushed aggressively for me to refinance our house under updated tax advantages. At the time, her arguments sounded practical. Better rates. Better long-term flexibility. Now, every conversation replayed differently inside my head. Every financial suggestion carried a shadow behind it. How long? I asked. Claire brushed a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. Since February. 8 months. 8 months of dinners, vacations, family photos, anniversary posts, and fake smiles layered over strategic deception. I walked toward the hallway closet and pulled out a manila folder. Inside sat printed account statements, property records, phone logs, and copies of hotel receipts. Claire's face lost color as I placed the folder on the kitchen island between us. She finally understood the power balance had shifted. I already knew more than she expected. Then her eyes locked onto the final page sitting on top of the stack. A signed consultation agreement from a divorce attorney dated 2 weeks earlier. My signature sat at the bottom. Claire picked up the divorce attorney agreement with both hands like the paper itself carried weight. Her eyes scanned the signature twice before she looked back at me. You already planned all this? She asked. I watched her carefully because this version of Claire interested me more than the confident woman from 20 minutes earlier. The arrogance had started peeling away. Underneath it sat something frantic. I started planning after you changed your iCloud password at 2 in the morning, I answered. People hide behavior before they hide bodies. She tossed the agreement back onto the counter. So that is it. You turn our marriage into some corporate investigation. You turned it into risk management first. That line hit her harder than yelling ever could. Claire hated emotional distance because emotional distance removed her influence. For years, she controlled arguments through intensity. Tears, charm, seduction, silence. Every conflict inside our marriage eventually bent toward her emotional rhythm. Tonight, that system collapsed. I grabbed my laptop and opened another folder. Asset summaries filled the screen. Retirement accounts, equity positions, property evaluations. Claire narrowed her eyes. What are you doing? Securing exposure. You think I am stealing from you? I think you already prepared contingency accounts while sleeping beside me every night. She folded her arms tighter. Jason told me you would react exactly like this. The moment she said his name casually inside our kitchen, something inside my chest hardened permanently. People assume betrayal destroys trust in one explosive moment. Real betrayal works slower. It rewrites old memories one by one until your entire past feels contaminated. Suddenly, I remembered Claire pushing harder for access to my business partnership agreements 3 months ago. I remembered her asking detailed questions about vesting schedules during dinner. At the time, I thought she wanted involvement in my career. Now I saw reconnaissance. Jason gives legal advice now. I asked. Jason understands leverage. I almost laughed hearing that because Jason Reed carried over $2 million in outstanding debt across failed developments and lawsuit settlements. I knew because my investigator pulled his financial history earlier that evening. Claire still viewed him through fantasy. Expensive watches, penthouse views, private whiskey lounges. Men like Jason survive by selling illusion to emotionally restless people. Claire stepped closer to the island. You spent weeks spying on me while pretending everything felt normal. I spent weeks confirming reality before making decisions. That sounds insane. Insane would be transferring marital funds into hidden accounts while planning secret weekends downtown. Her jaw tightened. Silence stretched between us for several seconds. Then Claire made a mistake. A small one. The kind that reveals panic beneath confidence. She reached for her phone immediately after I mentioned the hidden transfers. Reflex. Protective instinct. Communication check. I noticed because investigators train themselves to spot patterns, and after 8 months of suspicion, my brain tracked her behavior. Automatically. Give me the phone, I said calmly. Her eyes snapped toward mine. Excuse me. You heard me. You have lost your mind. Open the banking app. Claire gripped the phone tighter against her chest. There it was again. Fear. Real fear this time. My stomach dropped because I suddenly realized the affair itself might rank lower on the list of problems sitting inside this marriage. Hidden money creates one level of betrayal. Hidden planning creates another. But hidden urgency? That usually means time-sensitive exposure. Claire backed away from the counter slowly. Then her phone screen lit up with a new text message from Jason Reed. One sentence appeared across the notification banner before she turned the screen over. Did you move the rest of the money yet? Claire flipped the phone face down so fast that the movement answered my question before she opened her mouth. People protect secrets instinctively, especially financial secrets. I stepped closer and held my hand out calmly. Unlock it. You are acting insane right now. Open the messages. You do not control me. You already gave another man access to our money. This stopped being personal an hour ago. Her breathing changed after that sentence. Faster now. Sharper. Claire always reacted hardest when conversations shifted from emotion into consequences. Affairs thrive inside fantasy. Documentation kills fantasy. She grabbed her wine glass again, probably hoping the movement made her look relaxed, but her hand shook slightly against the stem. Jason wanted me protected in case you froze accounts during a divorce, she said. Interesting strategy considering I had no idea I was heading toward divorce. You were emotionally absent for years. There it was again. The rewritten script. Every betrayal eventually arrives with a justification package attached to it. I had heard versions of the same speech during executive fraud cases. People rarely call themselves greedy. They call themselves overlooked, underappreciated, forced into survival. Claire stared at me like she expected guilt to appear on my face. Instead, I opened another file on my laptop. A spreadsheet filled the screen with highlighted transactions linked to the Cedar Hill account. Dates, times, routing numbers, cash movement patterns. Her expression tightened instantly. You tracked all that. I built predictive fraud reports for 14 years. You transferred money in repeating intervals every Thursday after Pilates. You investigated your own wife like a criminal. You structured withdrawals under reporting thresholds. Silence hit the kitchen again. Heavy this time. Claire looked toward the hallway like she needed distance to think clearly. Then she made another mistake. Jason said forensic accountants usually look for larger transfers first. I leaned back slowly. So now he teaches you concealment strategy too? Claire pressed her lips together. Too late. She had already exposed the dynamic. Jason did not just sleep with married women. He coached them, guided them, prepared them. That realization shifted the entire situation into darker territory, because manipulation works differently when planning enters the picture. I grabbed my phone and opened the investigator's background report on Jason Reed. Multiple civil settlements. One former fiancé accusing him of financial coercion during a lawsuit filed 4 years earlier. Another complaint tied to unauthorized transfers during a business partnership collapse. Claire watched me scrolling. You were trying to turn him into a villain because your ego got hurt. No, I answered quietly. I am trying to understand why my wife started hiding money after meeting a financially unstable real estate developer with lawsuit history. Her eyes narrowed again. Defensive. Cornered. Calculating. Jason understands ambition, she snapped. Jason understands leverage and image. Men like you think paying bills makes you irreplaceable. That sentence landed differently than the affair. Affairs destroy trust. Disrespect destroys identity. I suddenly remembered the exact moment Claire started changing. Last winter during a charity gala downtown. Jason spent 20 minutes talking about private investments while Claire watched him like he hung the moon itself over Manhattan. Afterward, she spent the entire drive home criticizing my routines. My caution, my predictability, my structure. Back then, I thought she wanted excitement. Now I understood something uglier. Claire had started measuring men through status performance instead of character. Her phone vibrated again across the counter. Another text from Jason, this time longer. Claire lunged toward it instantly, but I grabbed the phone first. Her face drained completely as I read the message out loud. The bank flagged the transfer. Call me before your husband sees the trust paperwork. The second I read that text message, Claire stopped acting like a rebellious wife and started acting like someone trapped inside a collapsing operation. Her entire posture changed. Her shoulders stiffened. Her eyes locked onto the phone in my hand with pure survival instinct. Give me that, she snapped, stepping forward fast enough to spill wine across the marble counter. I moved the phone out of reach calmly. What trust paperwork? Claire pressed both palms against the island and lowered her voice. You are twisting everything. Then explain it clearly. Jason wanted to help me protect future assets. Future assets from who? She hesitated for 2 seconds too long. From instability. I stared at her in silence after that answer because suddenly every strange financial conversation from the past year connected together like pieces sliding into place. The refinancing push, the hidden LLC, the new investment accounts, the increased pressure for shared business access. Claire had already begun preparing an exit months before tonight. The affair served as fuel, but the real objective looked bigger now. She wanted leverage before ending the marriage. I opened the text thread further while she watched helplessly from across the kitchen. Jason's messages stretched back weeks. Discussions about wire transfers, trust structures, timing, legal exposure. One message stopped me cold. Once the Nevada trust activates, Ethan loses visibility. My stomach tightened instantly. Nevada Asset Protection Trusts. I knew exactly what those were because high-net-worth divorce cases used them constantly. Expensive, aggressive, designed to shield money before litigation. Claire saw the realization hit my face. It was precautionary, she said quickly. Jason just knows finance. Jason knows concealment. You are making this ugly. You involved lawyers and hidden trusts behind my back while sharing hotel suites with another man. Claire paced toward the dining room, then back again. Her confidence kept cracking apart in waves now. You checked my accounts, hired investigators, tracked my calls, dug through legal records. You think that sounds healthy? Healthy marriages rarely require forensic accounting. She rubbed both hands across her forehead hard enough to smudge her makeup slightly. For the first time all night, she looked exhausted instead of smug. You stopped seeing me years ago, she said quietly. You saw schedules, bills, investments, performance. I felt invisible inside this house. Invisible people usually do not transfer marital funds into hidden trusts. That sentence hit her hard. Claire looked away instantly because deep down she knew the emotional justification had limits. Affairs happen inside emotional chaos. Financial deception requires planning, intent, coordination. Jason had given her a fantasy version of empowerment wrapped inside expensive dinners and legal language. The problem with fantasies is they collapse under scrutiny. I picked up the manila folder again and pulled out another document from the back section. Temporary account restrictions. Earlier that evening, after receiving the investigator's preliminary findings, I called my attorney and my private banker. We froze outgoing transfers above $10,000 from all joint accounts pending review. Claire's eyes widened the second she recognized the paperwork. You froze the accounts? I protected marital assets. You had no right. Actually, my attorney disagrees. She grabbed the papers from my hand and scanned them rapidly. Panic spread across her face now in full view. Jason probably promised smooth exits, hidden reserves, strategic positioning. Instead, she stood trapped inside a kitchen holding legal notices while every financial escape route closed around her. Then her phone rang again. Jason read. This time, Claire looked terrified to answer. Claire stared at the incoming call like the screen carried a bomb countdown. Jason's name glowed across the display for 4 full seconds before she finally grabbed the phone from the counter and turned away from me. "I need to take this," she said quietly. "Take it here." "Ethan." Speakerphone. Her jaw tightened instantly. That reaction alone told me Jason already knew more than he should have about our finances. Claire stepped toward the hallway again, but I blocked the path calmly without touching her. "You involved him in marital assets. That makes this my business now." She looked furious for a second, then trapped the next. Finally, she answered the call and pressed speaker. Jason's voice filled the kitchen immediately. Smooth, controlled, the kind of voice built for expensive restaurants and bad decisions. "Claire, listen carefully," he said. "You need to move the secondary transfer before banking compliance freezes the trust account." My chest tightened hearing that sentence out loud because suddenly every suspicion became reality. Claire glanced toward me fast, silently begging Jason to stop talking. "Too late." "Jason," I said calmly. Silence exploded across the line for 2 seconds. Then his tone shifted instantly into corporate professionalism. "Ethan, I figured she would eventually tell you." Interesting choice of words. This situation feels emotional right now, but emotional reactions create expensive outcomes. I almost smiled hearing him say that inside my own kitchen. Men like Jason always mistake manipulation for intelligence. "How much money did you advise my wife to move?" I asked. Claire made her own financial decisions. That answer sounds prepared. Another pause. "You should focus on protecting your dignity instead of escalating conflict." There it was. Jason believed he controlled the board. Probably because Claire spent months feeding him private details about my habits, routines, income, emotional patterns. Affairs thrive on the fantasy that the outsider understands the marriage better than the spouse inside it. "You involved yourself in concealed asset transfers tied to a married woman," I said. "My attorney will enjoy reviewing that." Jason's tone hardened immediately after the word attorney entered the conversation. "Nobody concealed anything." "Then you should feel comfortable discussing the Nevada trust paperwork under subpoena." Claire closed her eyes the second I said subpoena. Jason went completely silent. For the first time during the call, I heard uncertainty creeping into his breathing. Then he recovered quickly. "Claire," he said carefully, ignoring me now, "you should leave the house tonight." Conversations like this become unstable fast. Leave the house. That sentence hit differently because suddenly I understood the real dynamic between them. Jason never planned to build a future with Claire. He planned to extract control over her decisions while positioning himself as the rescue option during emotional collapse. Predators love confused people with access to money. Claire looked between me and the phone like her fantasy world had split open in front of her. "Jason," she started softly. "Pack a bag," he interrupted. "We will sort everything out tomorrow." "We." Interesting word. Earlier tonight, Claire sounded powerful, confident, desired. Now she looked like someone waiting for instructions. I stepped away from the kitchen island and walked upstairs without another word. Behind me, Claire called my name once, then again louder. I ignored both. Inside our bedroom, I opened the walk-in closet, grabbed 2 large suitcases, and started throwing her clothes inside with cold efficiency. Designer dresses, shoes, jewelry cases, handbags. 12 years of marriage reduced into organized luggage piles under recessed lighting. Claire rushed into the doorway halfway through the second suitcase. "What are you doing?" she asked breathlessly. I zipped the bag shut and looked directly at her. Following Jason's advice, I carried the suitcases downstairs one at a time while Claire followed behind me in stunned silence. Earlier that night, she walked into the house, smiling like she controlled the emotional temperature of the room. Now she looked disoriented, scrambling to understand how the balance flipped so fast. I placed the luggage beside the front door carefully, almost mechanically. Years in corporate negotiations trained me to separate emotion from execution. Claire finally stepped in front of me near the staircase. "You are throwing me out over one mistake?" she asked. This stopped being one mistake when hidden trusts entered the conversation. "You are overreacting. You involved another man in our finances. Because you stopped listening to me. You transferred money behind my back." Her eyes flashed with frustration. I felt trapped in this marriage. Most trapped people do not coordinate asset shielding strategies. That line silenced her again. Claire hated facts during emotional arguments because facts removed room for manipulation. I walked toward the kitchen island and opened my laptop again. My attorney had already emailed temporary filing drafts along with recommendations for immediate financial separation. Password changes, beneficiary reviews, account monitoring, documentation procedures. I started working through the checklist line by line while Claire watched from across the room. "You already planned your entire escape," she said quietly. "I planned defense after discovering yours." Her breathing sharpened again. "Jason told me this would happen." I looked up slowly. Jason predicted I would protect my finances after finding out my wife hid money with him. Jason said powerful men always become vindictive once they lose control. That sentence irritated me more than the affair itself because it revealed how deeply Jason had inserted himself into our marriage narrative. He reframed me into a villain before I even knew his name. Predators always isolate targets emotionally first. Then they reshape reality through repetition. Claire walked toward the window near the entryway and folded her arms tightly across her chest. "You think this makes you strong?" she asked softly. "No," I answered honestly. "This makes me awake." Silence settled between us after that. Heavy, mature, final. I realized something strange in that moment. The pain inside my chest had started changing shape. Earlier, I felt humiliation, rage, confusion. Now I felt clarity, dangerous clarity. Claire spent months building secret structures behind my back while still sleeping beside me every night. That level of deception requires rehearsal, discipline, intention. You cannot accidentally construct hidden financial exits. Her phone buzzed again on the counter. Another message from Jason. This time she ignored it. Interesting. The fantasy had finally started cracking. I zipped the final suitcase closed and opened the front door. Claire stared at me like she expected one last emotional collapse. One last plea. One last desperate argument proving I still revolved around her decisions. Instead, I set the luggage outside calmly and handed her the car keys to the Range Rover. "Take the vehicle registered under your name," I said. "The Mercedes stays here. You already separated the assets." "I started 3 hours ago." Her face tightened with disbelief. "Who are you right now?" I held eye contact for several seconds before answering. "The version of your husband that finally read the entire contract." Claire grabbed the handle of the first suitcase slowly. The confidence from earlier had vanished completely now. No smug smile. No superiority. Just exhaustion mixed with rising fear. Then she asked the one question that revealed everything underneath her arrogance. "If I leave tonight," she whispered, "there is still a chance we fix this later, right?" Before I could answer, headlights swept across the front windows. A black Escalade pulled into the driveway. Jason had arrived. Jason stepped out of the Escalade wearing a charcoal overcoat and the kind of polished confidence that works well on people searching for escape routes. He glanced toward the suitcases beside the front door first, then toward Claire standing frozen in the entryway. I watched his eyes carefully because men reveal priorities in the first 3 seconds of unexpected situations. Jason barely looked at me. He focused on logistics, control, damage containment. "Claire," he called calmly, "grab your things." No concern, no emotion, just direction. Claire hesitated instead of moving immediately. That tiny pause changed the energy of the entire driveway. Earlier, she followed his guidance like a passenger climbing onto a rescue boat. Now, uncertainty had entered the equation. Jason walked closer to the porch and finally looked directly at me. "Ethan," he said evenly, "this situation escalated too fast tonight." Interesting timing for that realization. Everybody needs space before lawyers complicate things further. I almost laughed hearing that because lawyers had already entered the situation hours ago. Jason simply realized he lost informational advantage. He expected emotional chaos. Instead, he walked into documentation, frozen accounts, and legal preparation. Claire wrapped her arms around herself tightly beside the doorway. "Jason," he froze the joint accounts. Jason's expression shifted for half a second before smoothing back out. There it was. Real concern. Men like Jason build confidence through momentum. Once momentum breaks, panic starts leaking through the edges. "Temporary issue," he answered quickly. "We expected resistance." We again. Always we. He kept framing himself as Claire's strategic partner while carefully avoiding direct accountability. I stepped outside onto the porch slowly. Did you also expect banking compliance to flag the trust transfers? Jason's jaw tightened instantly. You are making assumptions without full context. You used a Nevada structure tied to concealed marital funds. Context looks pretty straightforward. Claire looked between us nervously now, almost like she finally realized the fantasy version of Jason operated very differently under pressure. Earlier, he sounded smooth over the phone, confident, untouchable. Standing under the porch light with legal exposure entering the conversation, he suddenly looked older, more careful. Claire, Jason said firmly, we should leave. Where exactly? I asked. Your condo. Jason ignored me completely. Pack the rest tomorrow. Tonight just needs distance. Claire still had not moved. That surprised him too. I could see it in the way his eyes sharpened slightly. Control slipping away irritates manipulators faster than conflict itself. You told me everything was protected, Claire said quietly. Jason lowered his voice. It still can be if everybody stays calm. The bank flagged the transfer. Because timing changed. You said Ethan would stay distracted. Silence slammed into the driveway after that sentence. Jason looked at Claire sharply. Too sharply. She realized it instantly too. For the first time all night, she looked genuinely embarrassed instead of defensive. That one sentence exposed the entire structure underneath their relationship. Jason never viewed me as a husband. He viewed me as an obstacle requiring management while assets moved quietly in the background. I stepped back toward the doorway and folded my arms. How much money were you planning to move before she left? Jason answered immediately this time. You should speak through attorneys from now on. Translation, he finally recognized risk. Claire looked at him carefully now, really looking at him for the first time instead of through him. Fantasy had started dissolving under pressure. The expensive dinners, luxury suites, and smooth speeches suddenly collided with subpoenas, banking reviews, and financial investigations. Reality ruins performance quickly. Then another car turned onto our street and slowed near the driveway. A dark blue sedan. My attorney stepped out holding a leather folder under his arm. Jason's face lost color immediately. My attorney walked up the driveway carrying a leather portfolio thick enough to end fantasies permanently. Jason took one step backward the second he recognized him. That reaction told me more than any courtroom document ever could. Confident men stay relaxed around attorneys. Careful men calculate exposure. Evening, my attorney said calmly as he reached the porch. Claire. Then he looked directly at Jason. And you must be Mr. Reed. Jason forced a tight smile. I think this conversation should happen later. Unfortunately, my attorney replied. The banking review already started tonight. Claire's face drained again. Review, she whispered. My attorney opened the portfolio and pulled out several papers clipped together with color tabs marking transaction histories and account structures. The flag transfers triggered enhanced compliance procedures through Wells Fargo's private banking division, he explained, especially after routing patterns connected to undeclared trust movement. Jason folded his arms immediately. Defensive posture, closed chest, shrinking control. Nobody committed fraud, he said sharply. That depends on disclosure timelines and intent, my attorney answered. Courts usually dislike concealed marital asset positioning during active affairs. Claire looked physically smaller standing beside the suitcases now. Earlier that night, she carried herself like someone escaping an ordinary marriage. Now she looked trapped inside legal consequences she barely understood. That is the danger of emotional affairs mixed with financial manipulation. People chase excitement before calculating fallout. Jason stepped closer to Claire and lowered his voice. You need to stop talking tonight. There it was again. Control disguised as protection. I finally understood why Claire changed so drastically over the past year. Jason sold certainty to emotionally restless people. He made risky behavior feel sophisticated. He wrapped selfishness inside language about freedom, empowerment, and leverage. Men like him thrive in emotional fog because clarity destroys their influence. Claire looked between all three of us slowly. Me, Jason, the attorney. Her entire fantasy had collapsed into paperwork, subpoenas, and exposure reports under the porch lights of the house we built together. Jason, she said quietly, you told me everything was secure. Jason exhaled hard through his nose. It would have been if Ethan stayed unaware longer. Silence hit like a punch. Even my attorney stopped flipping through papers for a second. Claire stared at Jason with pure disbelief because he finally said the quiet part out loud. He never cared about repairing her life. He cared about controlling timing. Timing for transfers. Timing for exits. Timing for leverage. Suddenly, Claire looked back at me differently. For the first time all night, I saw shame replacing arrogance. Real shame. Not because she got caught sleeping with another man. Because she finally realized she helped dismantle her own marriage for somebody who viewed her like a strategic asset instead of a partner. Jason glanced toward the Escalade impatiently. Claire, we need to leave. But she never moved. She just stood there holding the handle of her suitcase while tears gathered slowly in her eyes. Then she asked the question that should have come months earlier. Did you ever actually care about me? Jason hesitated. 1 second. Maybe 2. Long enough for truth to enter the room before words arrived. I cared about helping you, he answered carefully. Wrong answer. Claire looked down immediately after hearing it because deep inside, she finally understood the difference between being desired and being valued. I picked up the final suitcase and set it beside the others near the driveway. Then I looked directly at Claire one last time. The most dangerous people are the ones who make betrayal feel empowering while they profit from your confusion. Nobody spoke after that. Jason looked irritated. My attorney closed the folder quietly. Claire stood frozen beside the luggage, staring at the house like she suddenly realized she traded permanence for performance. Then she climbed slowly into the Escalade beside the man she once believed would rescue her. As the SUV pulled away from the curb, I noticed something strange for the first time all night. The silence inside my house finally felt honest.